Right now, or maybe 3 months ago or 6 months ago, a hacker had full access to your Windows PC. Not because you clicked a bad link, not because you downloaded pirated software, not because you fell for a phishing email. They got in because Windows itself had a door left wide open. 2 secret vulnerabilities, 2 0 days. Actively exploited by real threat actors in the real world, targeting real people while Microsoft sat on the information for months before doing anything about it. And the worst part? You had absolutely no idea. Stay with me because what I'm about to show you is not a theory. This is documented, this is confirmed, and this affects every single person running a Windows machine right now. Before we go deeper, let's make sure we're on the same page about what a 0 day actually is, because Microsoft and the media love to bury this in technical language that makes your eyes glaze over. A 0 day vulnerability is a flaw in software that the developer does not know about yet, or worse, knows about but hasn't fixed. The name comes from the fact that when it's discovered by attackers, the developer has had 0 days to patch it. For hackers, a 0 day is the equivalent of finding a master key to a building that the building's own architect doesn't know exists. The moment a hacker discovers one or buys one on the dark web, because yes, there is a thriving market for these, they can walk straight through your digital front door. No alarms, no warnings, no pop-ups asking you to allow anything. And here's what makes this story particularly disturbing. These weren't just any 0 days. These were privilege escalation vulnerabilities, meaning once a hacker got any kind of foothold on your machine, they could immediately elevate themselves to system-level access. That's the highest level of control on a Windows PC. Higher than your own administrator account, higher than anything you can see or control from your end. They could read your files, copy your passwords, activate your webcam, deploy ransomware, sit silently and watch everything you type, or simply use your machine as a launchpad to attack someone else. And while all of this was possible, while exploitation was actively happening in the wild, Microsoft's internal teams were not rushing to fix it. Let's talk about the 2 specific vulnerabilities at the center of this story. The first one lived inside the Windows Common Log File System driver, a deeply embedded component of Windows that most users have never heard of and have no reason to think about. It's part of the operating system's core infrastructure. It runs quietly in the background. It's trusted by the system itself. That trust is exactly what attackers exploited. By manipulating how this driver handled certain file operations, an attacker who already had basic low-level access to a machine, the kind you might get by running a mildly malicious piece of code, could instantly jump to full system privileges. Game over. Total control. The second vulnerability was discovered in the Windows Desktop Window Manager, the component responsible for rendering everything you see on your screen. Every window, every animation, every visual element on your desktop passes through this system. Again, a component so fundamental, so trusted, that Windows itself never questions it. Both of these flaws were being actively weaponized by a sophisticated threat actor before Microsoft acknowledged the problem publicly. Security researchers who discovered the exploitation in the wild had to push hard to even get Microsoft's attention. The timeline between first discovery and Microsoft issuing a patch stretched across multiple months, during which time the attackers continued operating freely. This wasn't a hobbyist running a script. Security analysts who investigated the attacks linked them to a state-sponsored threat group, the kind of operation backed by a government with resources, patience, and specific targets. Corporate espionage, government infiltration, journalists, dissidents, executives. But 0 days don't stay exclusive forever. Once a technique is out in the world, it gets copied, sold, and eventually ends up in the toolkit of every criminal hacker with a few $100s to spend on the dark web. Which means what started as a targeted government-level weapon eventually becomes a threat to everyone. Now let's talk about the timeline, because this is where it gets infuriating. Responsible disclosure is the process by which security researchers who discover vulnerabilities privately notify the affected company before going public. The standard industry window is 90 days. That's what Google's Project Zero uses. That's the accepted benchmark. 90 days is considered more than enough time for a company with Microsoft's resources to understand a flaw and deploy a fix. In this case, that window was not respected by Microsoft from the other direction. The vulnerabilities were being actively exploited. Researchers flagged the exploitation, and still, the patch took months to arrive. During that time, Microsoft's public communications said nothing. No advisory, no warning, no, hey, there's active exploitation happening, here's what you can do to reduce your risk. Just silence. Think about what that silence means for the average Windows user. No way to know they're at risk. No way to take protective action. No way to even ask their IT department to look into it. The patch eventually came through Microsoft's Patch Tuesday process. The monthly batch of security updates Microsoft releases on the second Tuesday of every month, which means even after Microsoft finally acknowledged the vulnerabilities, users who had automatic updates turned off or who were on delayed update schedules were still exposed for additional weeks. And Microsoft's Patch Tuesday notes? Buried in pages of technical documentation. No urgency, no banner, no emergency out-of-band patch that would signal. To users, this one is serious. Install this now. The message, intentional or not, was clear. Don't panic the user base. Here's the thing that nobody in mainstream tech media wants to say out loud. Microsoft's security problem is not a bug. It's a feature of how the company has chosen to operate. Windows is no longer Microsoft's core business. Azure Cloud Services, Microsoft 365 subscriptions, LinkedIn, GitHub, and now Copilot AI. These are where the money is. Windows is increasingly a delivery platform for Microsoft's subscription ecosystem, not a product they pour engineering resources into maintaining with obsessive security discipline. The Windows team has been through multiple rounds of internal restructuring. Veteran engineers who understood the deep architecture of the OS have left or retired. The team that once shipped Windows XP SP2, one of the most significant security overhauls in the history of consumer software, no longer exists in that form. What replaced it? Teams focused on shipping Copilot features. Teams working on integrating Microsoft accounts more deeply into the OS. Teams building the telemetry infrastructure that sends your usage data back to Redmond. Meanwhile, the security response infrastructure has become bureaucratic. Reports go into queues, severity ratings get debated internally, patch timelines get pushed to the next Patch Tuesday cycle because it's operationally convenient, not because it's the safe thing to do. And when researchers push back publicly, Microsoft has been known to dispute severity ratings to avoid the bad press of admitting a critical flaw. Rate a vulnerability as important instead of critical, and suddenly the story gets much less coverage. This is not paranoia. This is a pattern that independent security researchers have documented repeatedly, publicly, and with receipts. All right, enough rage. Let's talk about what you can actually do, because if you're still running Windows, you need a real action plan. Step 1, turn on automatic updates immediately and verify they're actually running. Go to Settings, then Windows Update, and confirm updates are being downloaded and installed. Don't just assume. Check the Update History tab and look at the date of the last installed update. If it's more than 30 days ago, something is wrong. Step 2, run Windows Update manually right now. Even if automatic updates are on, click Check for Updates manually. There have been documented cases where critical patches sat in the queue and didn't install automatically due to conflicts with other software. Step 3, enable Microsoft Defender's tamper protection. Go to Windows Security, then Virus and Threat Protection, then Virus and Threat Protection settings. Make sure tamper protection is switched on. This prevents malicious software from disabling your built-in antivirus. Step 4, audit your administrator accounts. One of the reasons privilege escalation attacks are so effective is that most Windows users run their daily account as an administrator. Go to your account settings and check. If you're an admin, and most people are consider creating a separate standard user account for daily use, and only switching to the admin account when you specifically need it. Step 5, watch your outbound network traffic. Most people only worry about what comes in, but when a hacker has system-level access, they're sending data out. Tools like Glasswire give you a clear view of what applications are making outbound connections. If something you don't recognize is phoning home, that's a red flag. And finally, seriously consider your alternatives. Every time a zero-day like this drops, Linux adoption spikes. Because Linux does not have this structural problem. It's not controlled by a corporation with financial incentives to downplay security issues. The kernel is open source, meaning thousands of independent eyes are looking at the code at all times. Vulnerabilities get patched fast, because the community's reputation depends on it. You don't have to switch overnight, but installing a lightweight Linux distribution on a spare partition or a USB drive and spending an hour with it costs you nothing and gives you options. 0 days, months of active exploitation, months of Microsoft silence, and a patch that finally came with no urgency warning buried in a monthly update bulletin most people never read. This is not a one-time failure. This is a pattern, and the people paying the price for it are not Microsoft shareholders. They're not Microsoft executives. They're the hundreds of millions of ordinary people who just need a computer to work safely. You deserve better than this. If you found this useful, share it with someone who still thinks their PC is safe because they have antivirus. Subscribe, because this story is not over. Microsoft's security issues are getting worse, not better, and we will be watching every development. Stay private, stay protected.